Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. My name is Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I am joined by my co-host.
Cooking, 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 cleaning, cleaning. Don't read at the table. Cleaning. Sex with random men. Taking money. Getting potatoes. Cleaning again. Cooking. Cooking. See you next week, everybody.
Yeah, I was waiting for the end because that's like the experience of this movie. Although you're speaking a lot more than anyone really speaks in this film that we're about to talk about.
How would I have done that bit without talking on this podcast?
I'm not saying that you should have. I'm just trying to illuminate what's going on here. So in this season of Awesome Movie Year, we are talking about the films of 1975. And we are here at our foreign film episode. And really, as we were planning this season, there are other notable foreign films from this year, but given what was going on in the cinema discourse at the moment, we really felt like there was nothing else we could possibly choose. So we are talking about Chantal Akerman's film, Jeanne Dielman, 23 Quai du Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles, or, however you want to pronounce that.
I think you did good with that. So,
thank you. It's weird because I'm pronouncing the numbers in English, but the rest in French. And of course,
I'll handle that. 1080.
Thank you. Yes, that's the way to do it. You just use an accent. You don't change the actual words. This film, of course, was recently, I guess it's 6 months or so ago or more, maybe now, voted the greatest film of all time in the latest edition of the Sight and Sound poll, which is an every decade poll of critics, academics, filmmakers about the greatest films of all time. And it is really, at this point, I think the most prestigious version of that. It's been going every 10 years since 1952, I believe. And we talked a lot about it, actually, in our episode on Tokyo Story from our 1953 season, which was at number 4 on that list. And Jason objected. I feel like that may happen again.
I object, sir. Right now, I object. And I did not, this movie's fine. I don't hate it, but like the greatest movie of all time, like Sight and Sound, why do you hate great movies?
Well, it's not the only movie on the list. There's other movies on the list.
As I recall, this is number 1. Goodfellas is 63. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting that that's the one you picked out. Not that I don't like Goodfellas, but I feel like there's other choices.
I know. That's just what was on the top of my mind. So
right. No, that's fair. It's a good movie. Yeah, it was a controversial pick, and maybe we'll talk about that more. But I think regardless of whether you believe that this is the greatest movie of all time or that it deserves to be at the top of that list, it clearly is quite a notable film. And it seemed like we could not leave 1975 without talking about this film. And it's interesting. I mean, this is not the kind of film that we typically cover, although I feel like we've covered a pretty large range of genres and approaches in our many episodes, but this is an outlier. But I think it's interesting for us to talk about something like that.
I agree. And like I said, like I mean, I just don't agree with this poll here, but the movie is interesting. It is a true definition of slow cinema. And if you need me to explain what that is, it's exactly what it sounds like, Josh. Slow cinema.
I think you illustrated what exactly that was at the top of this episode. I mean, it's an extremely long film. It's 201 minutes. So it's about 3 hours and 20 minutes.
3 hours and 21 minutes.
Yes, 3 hours and 21 minutes. Correct. You got to feel that extra minute there.
You know, we love doing math here on Awesome Movie Year.
Yeah, I'm super good at it. So it's extremely long and it is very slow. It is low on incident. There are a lot of long takes. The camera is
never moves.
Stationary. Yeah, never moves. There's minimal dialogue, repetitive actions. There are a couple times where not only does the camera not move, but nothing moves to the point where you might wonder, did I pause the movie? And that is all, of course, deliberate. I think the idea here is to really immerse you in the drudgery of this woman's life and to kind of get you to experience something like that. And there's multiple reviews on Letterboxd, but elsewhere talk about the idea that this movie is boring on purpose. That's not even a criticism, but that is deliberately boring.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, and I think Akerman said there's a hierarchy of images in cinema that places a car accident or a kiss or above a kiss at the higher in the hierarchy than washing up. It places a car accident or a kiss higher in the hierarchy than washing up. And it's not by accident, but relates to the place of a woman in the social hierarchy. Women's work comes out of oppression, and whatever comes out of oppression is more interesting. You have to be definite. You have to be.
Yes. I mean, regardless, again, of what you think, everything here is intentional. And I think, as we've talked about a lot of times with films that maybe we don't entirely enjoy, the clear vision of a filmmaker who has something to say is always appreciated, I think. And that's certainly what's going on here.
Another quote I got was, "This was the only way to shoot the film, to avoid cutting the action in 100 places, to look carefully and to be respectful. The framing was meant to respect her space, her and her gestures within it."
Right. And it certainly does that. I mean, we see every little gesture, we see every little motion. I mean, to the point where if you're immersed in this film, and especially the kind of repetitive nature of everything that Jeanne Dielman herself does, when something breaks that, like when she drops the spoon or whatever, it's like, oh my God, what's going on? She dropped a spoon. And it's equivalent to like the car crash or whatever that Akerman is citing.
A spoon crash.
As it is, it's a spoon crash. It's jarring. So
no, it's spooning.
Right. I don't know if there are any jars in the film as well. Probably somewhere in the kitchen there were.
Josh, I think we have to also say up front, this obviously 1975 made its debut in the US in 1983. So the only way to really watch it, I think, was to be in the theater and sit for 3 hours and 21 minutes. No cell phones, obviously, right? I'm not going to lie, man. I mean, I watched this on Criterion. I was like, hey, I'm going to break this up an hour at a time if I have to. And I did it in 2 sittings or maybe 3 sittings over 2 days. But like, it's a different way of watching the movie than perhaps was intended back in the day.
Right. No, that's absolutely true. And I think part of the intention, like I was saying, in immersing you in this world is that it's going to be an experience like you just described, that you're going to have to sit down in a theater in the dark with this as the only thing for your focus for those 3 hours and 20 minutes. And of course, nowadays, that's not necessarily the case. I did watch it in one sitting. I took a brief bathroom break in the middle, but it was relatively short, and I did not break it up over multiple days or anything. And I felt it, but I did feel like I sort of got into the rhythm of it. And also I was like eating dinner while I was watching this movie. And I was like, I feel like I'm reflecting this film. It's appropriate for me to be like making and eating my dinner while I watch this movie.
Yeah, you could have been reading a book. And when she told her son to not read at the table, you could have put your book down and, whatever it takes.
I could have. I did want to at least try to be watching the film at all times. But yeah, you're absolutely right that that's an experience that she is aiming for from her audience and that most people are not getting. I mean, it's just another piece of content. I watched this on Max, and it's great that something like this is available on a service like that and not just on Criterion. But, I'm typing in the title and this pops up right next to Jean-Claude Van Damme movies. It's like, this is the range of what people are.
I thought you were going to be like, after Jeanne Dielman, I watched Flip It or Flop It.
I mean, you could, right? It's there. It's all there.
Yeah.
So that's just the way that it is. So this was Chantal Akerman's second narrative feature film after Je tue il elle, which I actually have seen, although quite a long time ago when I was in college. And that is an experience.
How long is that movie?
That's short. I think I don't know if this is her only movie that's really long. I'm pretty sure it's her longest movie, but that's like 85 minutes. But you feel a similar level of tedium, I recall. It was a long time ago that I saw that, but I had no real context. I think it was it was in a class. It might have been a class that I took on French film. I can't remember, but it was some film class, and I had no idea who Chantal Akerman was. And I don't think the professor had really adequately prepared students for what this movie would be. And I was just like, what the fuck is this? And that movie has a like 10 or 15 minutes extraordinarily explicit lesbian sex scene that is just really unpleasant to watch. Not because it's lesbians, but because of the way I think she wants to make, just like the brief sex scene in this movie, which is not very explicit, but she wants to make that stuff kind of off-putting and make you think about how weird and gross it is when people have sex with each other. Anyway, that's not a film I would necessarily recommend that you watch, but that had brought her to attention of critics and academics, and as well as the Belgian government's culture division, which gave her a grant of $120,000, which formed the budget of this film. It premiered in the director's fortnight at the 1975 Cannes Film Festival.
No, you got that wrong. It took the entire director's fortnight.
Exactly. The 2-week-long film. Yeah, we'll get there eventually. And as you said, it was not released in theaters commercially in the US until 1983, although it did play at film festivals. But the main release in 1983, and I couldn't find general figures, but it did during that release gross $19,858 in the US. So not a lot, but I don't think that's Chantal Akerman is not monitoring the box office very carefully, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's too bad Marvel wasn't around when this came out. That would have been a good fit to bring her in as an Avengers director or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, weirdly, isn't this kind of what Marvel does, right? They find people who make these highly acclaimed independent films, and then they suck them up into their machine. So not to say that would be Chantal Akerman, but it's not that far off.
No, but I think most people would say like Eternals is, if not the worst, one of the worst, right? And that's Chloe Zhao. And that I'm not comparing. I mean, Nomadland was a slow movie too. So I think maybe they're not, maybe that wasn't the best fit, and maybe this would not be the best fit too.
Right. I don't think that comparing Chloe Zhao to Chantal Akerman is inaccurate necessarily, but you're right.
Booyah. Yeah. Booyah, film scholars. How do you like that?
So, given that it did not come out in the US until later, I was looking around for reviews, and I actually found a couple reviews from French publications where, of course, they were able to see it sooner. So I figured that would be appropriate to quote here. So we will start with Louis Marcarel from Le Monde, which is like the main daily newspaper in Paris. And this is translated via Google Translate, so it may not be perfect, but I'm going to try it. So he said, "To say these horrible things, Chantal Akerman employs the most insidious gentleness, flattens her story into a sluggish duration with no apparent ups or downs. Everything happens in a climate of carefully maintained neutrality. Everything seems insignificant. Jeanne Dielman is only apparently a hard, difficult film. With an almost immodest clarity, it invites us to question our whole perception of everyday life, to rediscover those secret impulses that work in the shadows of our society. Jeanne Dielman is a poem. We cannot dissociate in this exceptional success the part of the author, that of Delphine Seyrig, who plays Jeanne Dielman, that of our compatriot Babette Mangolt, who holds the camera. Certainly the first feminine masterpiece in the history of cinema."
Yeah, I also had that last line in my notes there.
Yes.
So that's his opinion.
Right. Well, I mean, I think whether you think this is, again, the greatest film of all time or whatever, I mean, certainly this was a step forward in terms of women making films, right? Not that women hadn't made films before this, but this kind of uncompromising vision that is very rooted in female experience, I think is something that people hadn't really seen much of.
You heard it here, folks. Josh Bell hates lesbian sex and women don't know how to make movies.
Yeah. Well, that was the perspective probably of the time. and there were very few, even in this avant-garde realm, or even in like the French New Wave, right? Beyond Agnes Varda, there aren't that many female filmmakers at this time.
Yes, I'm glad you didn't bring up Leni Riefenstahl, Josh. So,
Riefenstahl.
Whatever. She was a Nazi.
Riefenstahl, she's not Jewish. Literally, the entire thing about her is that she was a Nazi.
Well, she was I'm not a fan.
No, although, I mean, I've never seen, this is a way off topic, but I've never seen Triumph of the Will, but I think it is, it's an artistically significant work, even though it's reprehensible.
Right. There you go.
I mean, that's a thing to struggle with, but not, I don't think, something we're struggling with here.
No. And I'm going to keep calling her Riefenstahl.
Okay.
Score one for the Jews.
Yeah, I don't know if that exactly is what's happening there, but you do what you want to do.
No, I just messed up her name, but who fucking cares?
All right. Yeah, she deserves it. So, continuing with the French critics, Danielle Debreu, in Jason's favorite publication, Quai du Cinema.
Which, of course, you must mention I am an honorary member of.
That is not true. And this was translated by an actual translator, not Google, so it should sound a little better. She said, the heroine of this film, Jeanne Dielman, simply doesn't correspond to those sorrowful archetypes of human suffering, those tragic figures as old as ancient drama itself. She is just a housewife, a housebound mother, one of those ordinary, inconspicuous people you meet in the grocer's or at the school gates. She has never occupied center stage. She is elsewhere. She is in us. She is our mother, everybody's mother, strangely transformed into spectacle, transported to the screen in her daily gestures, endlessly repeated, those gestures that we finally look at and stop to question. She reigns over a world of objects, of obedient things which are the only witnesses of her life, the only signs of her dominance. Indeed, it's when this dominance can no longer be taken for granted that her downward slide begins, for this is her only link with the world outside herself, with anything really tangible.
And I think I'm inspired, Josh, by this review. I was thinking of Mr. Mom with Michael Keaton. I feel like it's time for Michael Keaton to remake Jeanne Dielman as John Dielman.
Yeah, to really spectacularly miss the point of everything in this film.
Shot for shot remake. Keaton's in, baby. So
yeah. I feel like there could be something like that. We just talked about drag queens related to, what was the last movie we did, or 2 movies ago, and I feel like this is another
Stepford Wives, Stepford Husbands,
Stepford Wives,
thing.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I feel like this is another thing that could be, where is Jeanne Dielman the drag queen?
But there is, as with every season, we notice trends and something obviously in the zeitgeist about women and equality and what their perceived place in society is. And our art is tackling that here.
Right, totally. And Stepford Wives is a more mainstream genre version of that, which of course is written and directed by men. And this is the avant-garde take on that, where a woman is asserting her own perspective on these ideas. And I do think one of the things that this review points out was something that I noticed, and I was sort of semi-joking about the dropping of the spoon, but I feel like that's something that this movie does, that it lulls you into that routine. And so when something like that happens, you really do notice it. And it really does, it is significant as an indicator of Jeanne Dielman kind of losing her grip on this rigid routine that she has.
When she was like cooking, whether it was a schnitzel or something, like I was watching the method and I was like, oh, is she going to flour it before she basted an egg, or is she going to go right to the egg? But she did it the way I would have done it, which is flour, egg wash, and then breadcrumb and everything.
That's good. I would not have known how to do that, but I learned from this film.
I don't think you did, Josh. If I had asked you to make a schnitzel after this, I don't think you could have done it.
No, I don't even know what a schnitzel is, really. So that would not have worked. So finally, one American reviewer. And as I said, this did play film festivals. So this is Kevin Thomas in the Los Angeles Times from the 1977 Film X Film Festival in LA. And he said, Belgian filmmaker Chantal Akerman takes the old adage, quote, a woman's work is never done, and turns it upon the audience in her relentless 3-hour, 20-minute study of the domestic routines of a Brussels widow with an utterly self-preoccupied teenage son. However, Miss Seyrig is truly riveting in the finest, surely most demanding role of her career. And Jeanne Dielman, seething with feminist protest, proves to be a shocker. An enormously demanding, superbly wrought film that also is most rewarding.
Yeah, that was a very demanding was the word, a hard performance to pull off by Delphine Seyrig, I'd say.
Yeah, I would say so too. And she was like a major star. This wasn't some, we talk about like Werner Herzog, for example, this season. And a lot of times these independent filmmakers or avant-garde filmmakers are recruiting non-actors to get this level of authenticity. But Delphine Seyrig was a major, major French film star.
And work with some great directors, including Truffaut, Buñuel, Duras, and Fred Zinnemann.
Yes, exactly. So. She was a big, but also was a feminist activist at the time. And so clearly would have been kind of on the wavelength of what Chantal Akerman was attempting to do.
Josh, the one thing I don't necessarily agree with in that review is that the son was self-obsessed or whatever. I think, if you look at another movie that is perhaps not a great fit with this one, but like that we talked about American Beauty, right? You see like the relationship between teenage or young adult children and parents and how far the rifts between them become sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he doesn't say self-obsessed. He says like self-preoccupied, I think there. And I did feel like the son was kind of a little dickhead a little bit. I mean, he's a teenager. He's off in his own world. But I think the disconnect between him and his mother is meant to be part of the film. And I don't know if you're meant to think that he is self-absorbed or inconsiderate or whatever, but clearly they don't have as close a relationship as parents and children might hope to have.
Yeah, I mean, but there are scenes where, like, she's at the table doing what she's doing. He's reading, like, oh, don't you want to listen to music tonight? It's not like he's just ignoring and inconsiderate of her.
Right. No, I mean, and he's, I think, like any entitled teenager or child or whatever, he kind of expects her to do things for him because that's what parents do. And we see her, waking up before dawn and polishing his shoes and, whatever, getting things ready for him because that's what parents do. And he doesn't exactly acknowledge it, but that's what kids do. So that's just how it is, right. I suppose.
There you go, Josh.
Yeah, as a non-parent, I can say these things. So obviously none of us had seen this film before, right, Jason? And had you ever seen any Chantal Akerman?
No. And while I didn't hate this film, I don't really feel myself with the urge to delve deeper into her catalog anytime soon.
Yeah, I was briefly contemplating trying to watch, News from Home, which is a documentary film that's probably her second most well-known film that is from around this time as well, and is much shorter and is available on Criterion, but I didn't have the time or really the inclination. But I mean, I'd be mildly curious. Like I said, after having watched Je tu il elle, 20 plus years ago, I certainly came away from that thinking, well, I don't want to watch any more of her films. But I'm glad that I had the chance to watch this because it's so notable, but it's such a time commitment and a grueling experience that I doubt I would have made the effort to watch it were it not for this external reason. So I'm glad that we had this opportunity. But yeah, I probably am not rushing to watch more Chantal Akerman either. Dave, you watched this on the treadmill, right?
the bike,
oh,
actually. Okay. Yes. Partially there, partially home, partially all over the place. Honestly, it was like 5 or 6. And I'm usually like very against watching things in segments, but yeah, you kind of have to with this.
I feel like, again, like me making dinner or whatever, like going through the drudgery of your exercise routine maybe almost is a good reflection of this film.
Is this the longest movie we've ever covered? It probably is.
I believe Heaven's Gate is longer than
Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, I think Heaven's Gate was close to 4 hours. So.
Oh yeah, what a time!
A lot more happened in Heaven's Gate.
Yeah.
So, anything else you want to talk about in the background of this film, Jason?
She shot this with an all-women crew, which is cool. But I think Akerman said that she made the mistake of just saying like it's an all-women crew as opposed to making sure she picked the right women to shoot.
Yeah, that is key. I feel like with any kind of crew, you want to pick the right people, not just the ones who are there. So, lesson learned. So we'll come back then in a moment and talk more of our general thoughts on Jeanne Dielman. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1975, we are talking about our foreign film pick, Jeanne Dielman, et cetera, from director Chantal Akerman. And as
Quai du Commerce.
thank you, Jason. Really, I feel like this is like Adam Sandler's version of a Belgian accent or something somehow.
Hey, there you go. Another guy right for the remake of Jeanne Dielman.
I can't wait for Jason's Jeanne Dielman 3-hour-long comedy sketch starring Adam Sandler.
You know, Josh, it's funny you say that because I took this note. With the release of the DVD edition by the Criterion Collection in 2009, the company held a contest that invited fans to create cooking videos inspired by the film and post them on YouTube.
Yeah.
So you're not that far off.
And it's okay to have a sense of humor about this. I hope that Chantal Akerman herself was amused by that and had a sense of humor about her film while also taking it seriously.
Oh, yeah. I thought you meant about that contest, but I don't know. I think she was.
No, she was still alive in 2009. She was still alive. Yeah. So I did mean that. I hope she does have a sense of humor or did have a sense of humor about that and about the film. I mean, there's not really any humor in the film, but that's not to say that she herself would have been humorless or not open to jokes or whatever.
Yeah, that would be a weird thing to say. Like, hey, you made a drama. You don't like any jokes ever.
Right. But yeah, this is certainly a serious film. There's no levity here. There's really no like relief or break. I mean, I think again, that's part of the point of the film.
Here's my thing, Josh, and I think this is the big conversation point for me. And I think I put it on Go for Jason, my Letterboxd review. This is a 3-hour and 21-minute movie. I feel like I could have gotten this in 81 minutes and it would have had the same effect on me.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree, but again, I feel like the length is part of the concept of this, that the fact that you feel that way is she wants you to feel that way. She doesn't want you to come out of it at 80 minutes and be like, I got it. She wants you to come out of it at 3 hours and be like, I could have gotten it in 80 minutes, but you had to really be bombarded with this drudgery to feel every moment of it to put you in along with that character.
Well, what's wild, and spoiler alert, and I hope you watch this. If you want to watch it, you should watch this before we talk about this, because you go through 3 hours and 10 minutes of the monotony and the drudgery, as you call it, and just the same steps over and over. And then it just takes a wild twist, 190 minutes into the film.
I mean, yes, but at the same time, I spent virtually the entire film expecting something like that to happen.
Did you? I understand what you're saying. Like, I could see how this got to that point, but also I could have seen if it never got to any point.
I agree, but I definitely thought, okay, this is going to lead up to some kind of act of violence. And I didn't necessarily know what it was going to be, but I thought, okay, either one of these Johns, she has these clients, just like one client every day. I don't think she's making a lot of money as a prostitute. She's not maximizing her time. Really.
She's like not Belle de Jour.
It's like a hobby that pays a little bit.
Right, basically. But she doesn't have a job otherwise. So
Well, she watches that baby sometimes.
I don't think she gets paid for that. It's just her neighbor's baby. But I definitely thought, okay, either one of these guys is going to kill her or she's going to snap and do, what actually...
Stab him in the neck with a pair of scissors after the sex, which she seemed to enjoy.
Yeah, did she enjoy it? She has this moment where, and I read somewhere, and I can't remember where it was now, that describes that moment as like, either she's having an orgasm or she's trying to fight him off. And I feel like you're not supposed to entirely know which one it is.
I thought it was either that she was enjoying it or she had already figured out what she was going to do, and she was trying to, up the ante for him and have him finish quick.
Oh, so that she could get to killing him?
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things in this movie that are meant to be ambiguous, but I did think that...
Well, yeah, because I've never done a post-sex murder, so I'm just guessing here.
I mean, you're missing out.
Yeah.
But I did...
Now, how did you commit your post-sex murder, Josh?
So it's like Colonel Mustard with the pipe in the library. Jeanne Dielman with the
That's
scissors.
why you don't go to the theme parties with Josh.
But I did. The other thing I thought was that, maybe she's going to snap and kill her snot-nosed kid, who was, like I said, is kind of a dick.
That would have been I think that would have been, this was the better way to go. I don't know how that would have worked.
No, I agree. I mean, this makes the most sense. And I think this conveys the point that Akerman is trying to convey. But I was just thinking something drastic was going to happen, I guess is my point.
And it did.
It did indeed. But there's a lot of leading up to that.
Not drastic things that
exactly
don't happen.
But I mean, again, it is foreshadowed in a way by these tiny things that break the monotony of the routine, the dropping the spoon. At one point, she cooks the potatoes. She forgets the potatoes are cooking and she has to throw them out and go buy some new potatoes so that the potatoes are ready for dinner and things like that. Really small things.
Do you think there should have been a sequel where she's in jail and like cooking potatoes in jail?
Maybe.
Cooking potato, filing shiv.
Or maybe she gets away with it.
Murdering cellmate.
And she just continues on her daily routine. So there were a few things in this movie that I was like, I don't really know what they're doing, like the characters. And I wasn't sure if I was obtuse or if there were certain things that, like, if I were Belgian in 1975, I would have understood. But there's two moments, and maybe Jason, you can, or Dave, maybe you can explain. There's two moments in this film where she and her son in the evening, they leave the apartment. And as far as I could tell, all that they show in the film is it looks like they kind of walk around the block and go back. But I wasn't sure if they were supposed to be going somewhere that we don't see. Because the second time he even says, like, oh, are we going to have time to go now because we ate so late? And that's when she has to redo the potatoes. So where did they go, Jason?
I took it as an evening walk, but again, does it matter?
I mean, I think it does, because nothing that Akerman is doing here is unintentional.
Yeah, I thought they were just breaking up the monotony of sitting at home. Like, just like we're watching them, they also don't want to just sit there the whole time. So they're just going for a little walk.
Okay, yeah, maybe so. I just felt like there was something missing there. And especially in the second time where he's like, do we have time? Can we get there? Or whatever. I mean, maybe he means, do we have time to take a walk before my bedtime? I don't know.
Well, I thought that kid was so weird. Like, everything about him was weird. From that to his conversations with his mom, everything was weird about that kid.
He was weird. And I think that actor too, Jeanne Decorte is his name, he's a Belgian actor. And this is the main thing that he's did in his career as an actor, but he has this weird look. And maybe this was just me, but when he first comes in, I was like, oh, is that her husband? And it took me a moment to figure out, because I feel like he looked simultaneously like 15 and 45.
I think it's fair for us to assume that we didn't catch everything in this 3 hour and 21 minute marathon.
Right. And that's why I'm asking, because there were things that I felt like maybe I didn't catch this and maybe you guys did. So the other thing, and I feel like this is just knowing something about Belgian society in the 70s, but what is that office that she goes to pay them? And then she tries to go on another day and it's closed.
I think that could have been like any bill pay office back then, like it could have been a phone or electricity, any bill pay office.
All right. Yeah, that was kind of what I thought, but I wasn't sure if it was maybe something else or there was some other significance to it. And the fact that it's closed the second time, and then there's some box outside. And at first I thought it was like a payphone, but she's trying to put coins in it. But I guess maybe that's just an alternate way to pay your bill.
I don't know. I was not around in Belgium in the 70s. So.
We really should have booked a Belgian housewife as a guest for this episode.
Especially one who did a murder.
Yeah. We should have just gotten Jeanne Dielman. Book her.
How did you feel about every shot being a static shot?
I mean, I think it's a deliberate choice.
Well, clearly.
And it's part of, and I mean, it's part of everything that she's doing to give you that monotony, that you don't even get the camera moving. And not only are they static shots, they're relatively long takes, but you also at a certain point in the movie, you get familiar with, okay, there's a sort of set number of setups that she has. Here's where the camera is when we're in the living room. Here's where the camera is when we're in the kitchen. Here's where the camera is when we're in the bedroom. And there's a moment later in the film as her kind of mental state is breaking down where she goes and sits in a chair in the living room and it's a new setup. And that is like, whoa, what's happening here? So I think that's all part of it.
Well, you're speaking on revolutionary terms here, Josh.
Yeah, thank you. What did you think of the way that she did that?
I mean, again, I feel like I got it and I understand why she did it. I mean, it makes sense why she did it, but I felt I would have gotten it in 2 hours less time.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, there's no close-ups. So for a movie where we're really trying to be in the headspace in a way of this main character, we don't get to see the emotion on her face, really.
Everything's from a distance, like Bette Midler used to tell us.
Yeah. Yeah, much like it's Bette Midler,
The
another
Divine Miss Sam.
potential star of the remake of Jeanne
We
Dielman.
got a few pitches that are red hot right now, baby.
Yeah. I mean, maybe this is weird to ask, but did you have a favorite part of this film, Jason?
I don't know. What do you want me to say?
mean, I'm
The
gonna be
the
honest.
bath scene with titties, or this post-sex murder, the schnitzel. What do you want me to say here, Josh?
I want you to be honest about it.
I don't think there was a fit. I think it was a level plane the entire way through.
Okay, so there was no moment that you were more fascinated than it.
The murder, that was like, okay, you wrote me in for 3 hours and 10 minutes, didn't you? You got me on that one, Akerman. So
yeah, I mean, I feel like because the dialogue is so sparse that any scene where characters are talking a bunch, you kind of sit up and pay more attention. And the scene where her fucked up son is talking about his really disturbing views on sex between his parents, I thought that was a fascinating scene.
That was interesting. Yeah. So
yeah. And I think that was another reason why I thought about what might happen, like with a drastic act at the end, because he talks about how in his misunderstanding of what sex was at a child, he thought that his father, who has been dead, they start out by saying has been dead for 6 years, that when his father was having sex with his mother, he was like stabbing her with a sword or something. And as a child, he was trying to prevent the parents from having sex by pretending to have like nightmares or whatever and making the mom come sleep in the bed with him. And I thought, well, one thing that could happen is he comes home unexpectedly and catches her with this client, and maybe he commits an act of violence.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah. Would you have preferred that?
I don't have any preferences. I think that might have been a little more interesting, but I really have zero preferences, Josh. I'm happy that they have sustenance.
Yeah, they do. They have a lot of, although the kid also ungrateful.
Starchy.
At one point, he barely eats any of the dinner that she spent like half the day preparing.
Well, maybe it wasn't as good as the schnitzel.
Yeah. So schnitzel is a meat dish? I feel like I imagine.
Yeah, it's usually pork, but you can use any meat. They do chicken with it, right? And you pound it out real thin, and then you bread it, like kind of the way I told you, and then you fry it. And it would be like kind of like the version of like chicken parm without any of the sauce or the topping. It's just like a fried chicken breaded breast or whatever it is, but it's usually pork. It's tasty. So,
all right. Yeah. I don't know. For some reason in my mind, I thought of schnitzel was some sort of pastry.
Nope.
No. I see. I'm learning so much here. Is that a Belgian food?
I know it as a German food, but I think it's, that kind of entire area of Europe, Austria and Germany, everything else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. What do you think of the baby?
I know you must have hated that scene because she let that baby cry for a long time. It was also weird because Jeanne Dielman just didn't seem to care that the baby was crying for a long time. She had to finish her task at that moment.
Right. Well, I think what it is she tries to kind of connect with the baby, right? The first scene where she takes care of the baby, she doesn't really do anything with it. The neighbor drops it off. She puts it in its little carrier, like on the table, and goes about her business. And then the neighbor comes back a little bit later and she gives the baby back to the neighbor. And the second time, I got the feeling that maybe in part related to her like distance from her son, she's trying to connect with this baby, right? She picks it up and she's like, "Oh, you're such a cute baby." And she's trying to kind of kiss it. The baby is not having it.
Such a cute baby.
Is crying. And then she does kind of what you're saying, where she clearly is like, okay, this is, I made a mistake here or whatever. I have no human connection. And she just puts the baby down and lets it cry while she does something else. And then the neighbor shows back up and she gives the baby back. And I felt like maybe that was also some indication of the difficulty of her in finding human connection.
I think that's fair. That's why you're a film critic, because you're making all these points there that the rest of us just don't even consider, Josh.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm sure other people have considered that. So we should maybe say that also the neighbor, who we only ever hear and don't see, is played by Chantal Akerman. So, or whatever that means.
Josh, I got to tell you, I really have nothing else to add on this film.
Nothing else. All right. Fair enough. Jason, did you like this more or less than Tokyo Story?
It's funny you bring that up because I give it a higher rating than Tokyo Story. But after all the feedback on Tokyo Story and all the talk that we had on it, I'm going to rewatch that at some point and see if I was a real asshole about it. Yeah, but I think you guys are the real assholes about it. That's my guess, is I'm not the asshole and you guys are the assholes.
Sure.
All right. Well, that seems like your consistent perspective. Certainly a lot more things happen in Tokyo Story.
Yeah, there are more things that happen. That's true. Maybe I just wasn't ready for that. And this one I was new going in, like, all right, get ready, kid. It's going to be a long fight tonight.
Are you ready to make your way through the rest of that list that you haven't seen?
I do want to make my way through the Sight and Sound list. I'm guessing you do too.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of these movies, not all of them, but a lot of these are this kind of experience that you need to prepare yourself for. And it might be a bit of a chore, but I'm sure rewarding. But yeah, shall we rate this out of 5 schnitzels?
Sure. I gave it 3. That's a hearty bunch of schnitzels right there. Fill you right up, Josh. 3 schnitzels.
I'm going to also give it 3 schnitzels. I think I appreciated the experience. Maybe even a little more than I expected. I can't say it's enjoyable, but I'm glad that I went through it. So, Dave, how would you rate this?
I actually went 3.5. I have a lot of the same, thoughts as you guys, but I just appreciated the parts of it that really worked. So it was.
Oh, you're so erudite, Dave.
That's me.
Hey, Josh, if nothing happened at the end, would you have rated it the same?
I think so, because I think it still immerses you in that experience. And in a way, if nothing happened at the end, it would emphasize the idea that I feel like comes across in the first 2 clients, that her seeing these clients as a prostitute is essentially no different from her cooking schnitzel. It's all just part of the monotony of her daily life. And I did wonder if that might happen too. And I feel like that would have been a valid way to end it as well.
Yeah, if I could just add, like, the ending's my least favorite part of the movie. So, maybe I would have liked it even more without that.
Why didn't you like the ending?
I don't know. I just thought it was like too... Like you said, I was kind of expecting it the whole time, Josh. Like you said, like some kind of act of violence to like close this thing out. And when it came, it was just so, I don't know, just abrupt and quickly over with. I was like, I either want more or less, basically.
I mean, it was abrupt. Although, again, I feel like as soon as she grabs those scissors, I'm like, oh, there's Chekhov's scissors.
Yeah, sure.
Something is happening with these scissors. Yeah. And she leaves them on the dresser rather than returning them to the kitchen. It's like, that's significant.
Oh, yeah.
So Jason's making quite a face. We'll come back in a moment and talk about the legacy of Jeanne Dielman. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1975, we are talking about our foreign film pick, Jeanne Dielman from Chantal Akerman. And as we've said, legacy-wise, I mean, this movie has gotten so much renewed attention in the last several months because of being at the top of that Sight and Sound poll as the greatest film of all time. And I feel like that's gotten a lot of people, including us, to watch it.
I think it did do that. But Josh, I'm going to go out and say it's not the greatest film of all time.
Here's a question. Jason, would it make your top 100?
No, I gave it 3. I gave it 3 out of 5, man. I don't think it would make my top 100.
Yeah, of course. Me neither.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would make mine either if I'm talking about my personal preferences, but I think it's legit to say that this is one of the most artistically significant films of all time. I mean, you can see that Akerman has influenced a huge range of filmmakers leading up to the present day. And I mean, I think also this is such a different kind of movie from the movies that previously were at the top of that poll. Citizen Kane, which was the one that was there for the longest, but then had been supplanted by Vertigo. And even Bicycle Thieves, which was the first one to ever top the list, which is certainly more austere than those other two, has a lot more incident, has a lot more things happening. And I just think that Akerman is going for something so different from what Hitchcock or Wells or De Sica would even consider, that it's almost hard to put this in the same category as those films.
Well, they did though, Josh. So it shows what you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a like ongoing critic problem. Even now, it's like, you are going to make your list of the best films of 2023. And do you really consider, Fast and Furious alongside some little art film if you are someone who likes both of those? And people do. And I mean, and I would too, even though I don't like Fast and Furious movies, but a blockbuster movie and an art kind of film, but they certainly have extremely different aims.
Yeah, well, we talked about this last year, and I actually just listened to Chris McQuarrie on Script Notes yesterday, and he was talking about how his aim is very maximalist in that he wants to have the biggest audience enjoy the movies at the highest level from an emotional standpoint, right? Which is something that I don't think Marvel is doing. They're just saying like, hey, we're gonna just keep playing to our fan base. But last year, my favorite movie, Dave's favorite movie, was Top Gun Maverick. So that did work for us. And talk about a movie that would be a double feature with Jeanne Dielman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you think Tom Cruise could be Jeanne Dielman?
I don't know if, I think he'd want to talk more.
Yeah. And he'd really be into the stabbing scene.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like he would really, go method.
There would definitely be close-ups on the eyes at some point, but I'm not going to doubt Tom Cruise. He did save movies according to Steven Spielberg. So
yeah, exactly. So this movie, even though it wasn't as acclaimed and sort of canonized at the time that it came out, it did help launch Chantal Akerman as a major world filmmaker. Like I said, News from Home, which is a sort of documentary film from a couple years later, is a big deal. And she continued to make films that were always, they were an event in the world of art house film through 2015, which was the year that she died. Her final film came out that year called No Home Movie, which was sort of a pseudo sequel to News from Home, both dealing with her correspondence with her mother and clearly a relationship that was key to a lot of her work.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, that after her mother died, she killed herself also. So it's not just key to her work, but a very sad ending as well.
Yeah. And it seemed like that relationship was something that kind of kept her going in her life, and that without that, maybe she didn't feel like she could.
Well, she called this movie a love film for my mother. So,
which makes you think that maybe she sees herself in the son of this film, maybe? Do we think?
No, I don't think.
You don't have any thoughts on anything.
You're really digging deep here, and I'm like, maybe I'm just watching it from a surface level, and that's okay too on this one.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. However you want to process any of these films is fine.
Thank you, Josh.
You're welcome.
Delphine Seyrig?
I don't know. Sure.
Last year at Marion Bad, that's one of your favorites, right, Josh?
No, I really hate Last Year at Marion Bad.
Day of the Jackal, is that 75? She was in that this year also, if I'm not mistaken. No, that wasn't 75, but that's another one I wanted to note.
Yeah, I mean, she did work with, as you said earlier, like all of these major directors. She was in The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, the Buñuel film. She was in A Doll's House, Last Year at Marion Bad. So, I mean, she was this huge star and also somebody who worked in these challenging, working with Buñuel and Alain Resnais. I mean, those are artistically ambitious filmmakers. And she herself directed a feminist documentary called Be Pretty and Shut Up. She formed a feminist video collective. So she was right there with Chantal Akerman. And I would have to think that as an up-and-coming filmmaker, that for Akerman to connect herself with someone who was that famous probably was a big deal to get her movie seen by more people.
Yeah, she directed 3 movies. I was going to ask you if you saw Sois belle et tati.
Which is Be Pretty and Shut Up. No, I haven't seen any of the films that she's directed. I have seen Last Year at Marion Bad and The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie. Have you seen The Day of the Jackal? That is a kind of a major American film.
At 73, I would like to see that. I don't think I've ever gotten around to that one, though.
No, nor have I, and I kind of hate Last Year at Marienbad, but is a landmark French art film, part of the new
Did you
wave.
think it was Marion bad?
I sure did. She also worked again with Chantal Akerman on 2 other films, Letters Home and Golden 80s, neither of which I have seen, but they seem to have a good working relationship.
Golden 80s sounds like a Time Life collection from back in the day that you could buy on late night infomercials with a lot of Hall & Oates songs.
Yeah, supposedly that's Ackerman's comedy. I would be curious to see how she handles comedy.
I'd like to see that, So.
Yeah. So that's about all I know about that. Jeanne Decorte, who plays the son, didn't really do a whole lot as a film actor beyond this. He was in one other Akerman film called All Night Long. He himself also directed. He directed 3 apparently major Belgian films from something that I read somewhere in the 70s, and mainly ended up working in stage, theater, opera, and dance, known for his modern adaptations of classical material, according to some website I found, and directed more than 40 theater productions. So that was really his main.
Well, then he will love our modern adaptation of Jeanne Dielman.
Yeah. I did find like his Instagram, which is, I mean, normal, but it is funny in a weird way to see this guy now. And he's just like, here I am on vacation. And I don't know, it's just a weird disconnect between that and Jeanne Dielman.
I did take the note that Todd Haynes, who just cleaned up there at Cannes, Gus Van Sant, and Celine Sciamma are 3 of the filmmakers who have been influenced by this movie.
Yeah, and I think the influence is wide and varied. I mean, all of those make sense. But I thought of Ty West. I thought of The House of the Devil as I was watching this film.
I thought of every A24 movie I've ever watched, pretty much.
There you go.
Except, I'm not going to say Everything Everywhere All at Once, Dave. That's the opposite.
Maybe not that one.
Right. Yeah. This is Nothing, Nowhere, Anytime.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I think that you can see that in movies that are a lot more mainstream, but take influence from this. And, Chloe Zhao too, like you mentioned, Jason. I did also note down, to go back to Jason's favorite publication, Cahiers du Cinéma.
I'm an honorary member. I don't have a choice.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That Jacques Donial Valcroze, who plays the second client that she sees and does not kill, was one of the co-founders of Cahiers du Cinéma and was the editor of it from 1951 to 1957.
Wow, that is even obscure for this show, Josh.
But I think it shows how she's immersed in that French New Wave culture, and here she's getting this notable film critic, although he was also an actor and a filmmaker on the side. But she's casting him in this film, so that's what I got. Anything else you want to say about the legacy here, Jason?
We did it.
We did.
It is a major accomplishment, by the way. That
it
we watched
is.
This.
Yeah. I mean, are you happy that you watched this film?
Relieved is the word. That's I felt like there was a weight off of my chest. So it's not bad. Like I gave it, I gave it a positive amount of schnitzels, as you know. So in our reviews, it is a task.
It is. But I mean, I think if you have any level of interest in seeing this film, it's worth the experience. If it's something that you think you would get something out of, devote the time and watch it.
If you watch this movie and Heaven's Gate back to back, please let us know, and you will be a guest on this show automatically.
You'd be in the Awesome Movie Year Hall of Fame.
You will be like Rob Reiner right there.
Yes. Yeah. So that's Jeanne Dielman, and that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. Check us out online and on social media.
We're on all the socials at awesomemovieyear.com. That's where you're looking, all the socials for us. That's our website. We're at Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram, Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter. Jason Harris Comedy or Jay Harris Comedy on all those things. Eat This Comedy still on Instagram and a website. Go for Jason, of course. Carry on the legacy of Cahiers du Cinéma over there at Letterboxd.
Yes, Letterboxd, the modern Cahiers du Cinéma. Some old stuff for me at joshbellhateseverything.com. Also check out Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook and at Signal Bleed on Twitter and on Letterboxd. And listen to our producer, David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on social media at Piecing Pod and join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces.
Has this ever come up as a puzzle piece, Dave?
Good question. I don't think so. I know last Night at Marienbad. Is that what it's called?
Last year at
Last
Marienbad.
year. I mean, that did once, but I don't think this has.
Yeah. Well, maybe now you can use it. I
Yeah.
look forward to hearing that.
I'm gonna.
So, Jason, what are we talking about in our next
I think
episode?
it's my pick, Josh, right?
It is.
Oh, baby, get ready. Pacino's back. Pacino at his greatest, I'd say. This might, what a run he had in the 70s. It's Dog Day Afternoon. Pacino, Sidney Lumet, both at the top of their game. Oh, man, this is a good one. Charles Durning, John Cazale, Chris Sarandon. We're going to have a good time, baby.
We are. I look forward to many impressions. So tune in next time for Dog Day Afternoon. And thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.